there was a gentleman named Chris Zano, and I want you to look him up because he's kind of a public figure now. Chris Zano won Mr. America as a bodybuilder in 1998. I believe he was either 20 or 21 years old. Shortly after that, he developed a disease called ulcerative colitis. And it's a very serious condition where you have ulcers in your colon. You're having trouble absorbing water, absorbing nutrients, and you basically have a hard time controlling your bowels. And it's a very bloody mess constantly throughout the day, and to the point where they would have to put towels on the seat of the car when they would drive somewhere. And if he was in a grocery store, he was always looking to see where the bathroom is to make sure he can get to it fast enough. And so this is a big bodybuilder who was also a fitness expert, who was kind of a celebrity, and now he's losing weight. And multiple times he'd have to call his wife and say, I had another accident, bring some towels, come get me. And I mean, it was devastating for him. And someone finally told him, and he was scheduled for surgery. So what they were going to do was they were going to remove his colon, entire colon, put a colostomy bag on him. And for someone who is in their 20s, who is young, who is fit, he went from weighing 225, 230 pounds all the way down to 145 pounds. I mean, he was basically skin and bone and very unhealthy, very weak, very sick. So this was the surgery they had scheduled, and someone said, why don't you go see a chiropractor? And he was very hesitant, because why would you see a chiropractor for ulcerative colitis? It doesn't make any sense. It has nothing to do with my spine. And his friend just kept saying, just try it, just try it, just try it. So he went to the chiropractor. Chiropractor explained some of the things I'm about to explain to you tonight. And at the end of that, he went for a long time, but he kept postponing his surgery, and eventually he didn't need the surgery. And he went on to actually become a chiropractor because of his experience and the miraculous healing he experienced. Then he built one of the largest practices, maybe the largest single location practice in all of probably North America. He was seeing in his one location over 3,000 visits per week. And now he's a consultant and he's back bodybuilding. He's an IFBB professional, and so that's one story. Second one I'll tell you. There's a gentleman named Tom Gilardi. Look him up when you get a chance. THOMGELARDI. Tom Gilardi. Tom Gilardi spent most of his childhood and teenage years in the hospital because he had a heart condition, and they told him he wouldn't make it past the age of 18. At one point, he says he was in the hospital for 2.5 years. Meaning, he said his feet didn't feel the floor for 2.5 years. There were times he had to transport him with wheelchairs and so on, and it was just a tough situation. So he said his birthday's in April. He said every April he was in the hospital. So every one of his birthdays he spent in the hospital. So for a child, that's very difficult. And at 16, he went back into the hospital, and the doctor said, this is it. You may live to be 18, you may not, but 18's the longest you're going to live, and you're not leaving the hospital ever again. You're here, and you're going to stay here. And now, Tom Gilardi passed away last October at the age of 92. And while he was in the hospital, that last time he was in the hospital, his brother-in-law went to him and said, you need to see a chiropractor. Why haven't you tried a chiropractor? He goes, what are you, an idiot? It's my heart, not my back. And his brother-in-law had fought in World War II, and he came home with severe migraine headaches, and no one knew how to take care of his migraine headaches, and he had ended up in a chiropractor. He said every clinic I went to, medical clinic he went to, they knew how to trigger the migraines, but they couldn't cure the migraines. It was like, oh, now you figured out how to give me a migraine, which I already could do by myself, but why can't you get rid of them? And the medication was the only solution. The medication was only temporary. So he finally goes to the chiropractor, and the chiropractor gets rid of his migraine headaches. So now he's in Tom Gilardi's hospital room going, please just try to see a chiropractor. He said, no, it's my heart. And his brother-in-law said, listen, what if the chiropractor doesn't do a thing to your heart, but the chiropractor makes your body function more efficiently? And if your body's functioning more efficiently, is it possible your heart would last longer? He said, okay, fine, I'll try it. So he goes to the chiropractor, and Tom Gilardi went on to become a chiropractor himself, and he started the Sherman College of Chiropractic, which is in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And the reason he called it Sherman College of Chiropractic is because when he graduated from chiropractic school, he had a mentor who really took him under his wing and showed him a lot about chiropractic, what it is, how to be successful at it, and all of that. That doctor's name was Dr. Sherman, and so he named the college after his mentor, Sherman College of Chiropractic. And like I said, he lived to be 92 healthy years young. So I'll tell you one other story. I had a patient, a lady who had a little boy as a son, and she was coming for chiropractic care. I think her husband was coming in as well sporadically, but their son never came in. But they always used to tell me, we need to bring him in. His name was Alan. The little boy's name was Alan. Alan, I think, was 2.5 years old. And the parents would say, he has severe asthma. And he has asthma attacks regularly. But when he catches a cold or he gets sick in any way, he has these severe asthma attacks where he completely stops breathing, turns blue, and we have to rush him to the hospital. So now what we do is the minute he catches a cold, we go straight to the ER before he has the asthma attack. So he can have the asthma attack in the ER so he can keep him from dying. And I said, well, why don't you get his spine checked? And it was the same conversation that Chris Zano had with his friend, same conversation Tom Gilardi had with his brother-in-law. I'm saying, but now it's the chiropractor telling him, why don't you bring him in? And they were like, yeah, one day we will, someday we will. I got a phone call. One day they said, listen, he's got a really bad respiratory infection, and his pulse oxygen is already low. He hasn't had an asthma attack yet, but we know he will. And he's not feeling very good, so we're on our way to the hospital, but we thought we'd stop in and see you first. I'm like, okay, don't put me under any pressure. Like, this kid's going to have a severe asthma attack right here in the office. So I said, well, we can call 911, it's okay. Bring him in. So he comes in, I do an evaluation, I check his spine, I find misalignments in the upper neck, I do an adjustment, and I say, go ahead, all right, take him. So then they leave to go to the emergency room, and I said, listen, I want you to bring him back first thing in the morning. I'll be here at 8 a.m., I want you back here at 8 a.m., he needs another adjustment. At least need to check to see how he's doing. And they said, fine, we'll be back at 8 a.m., but we're going to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, I came in the next morning, 8 a.m., they're not here. 9 a.m., they're still not here. 10 a.m., they're still not here. And I'm thinking, probably admitted him to the hospital. He's probably not doing well. 10:15, they come in the door. Little Alan's not in the stroller anymore. He runs all the way back there, jumps on an adjusting table and goes, I'm ready. And he's not dark circles anymore. He's not pale. He's not blue like cyanotic. And he's like, he's feeling good. I go, what happened? What did they do at the hospital? They said, well, no, we didn't even go to the hospital because he was feeling better already. As we were getting closer, he looked like he was doing better. So we thought we'd go home and wait it out. And then he slept. He fell asleep. The reason we didn't come at 8 o'clock is because he was sleeping. For the first time, he wasn't wheezing while he was sleeping. And so we decided we'd let him sleep. So now we've got colon, right, with Chris Zano. We've got the heart with Tom Gilardi, and we've got the lungs with little Alan. And there's dozens more stories I could tell you, different body parts. However, hello, Ethan, welcome. We saved you a seat.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, and there's food right here. Please help yourself. So, why is it that the colon, the heart, and the lungs respond to a spinal adjustment? Is that just chance? Is it like Tom Gilardi's brother-in-law told him, like, oh, we're just making your body more efficient and then it heals itself? Or is there more to it? So what I'm going to share with you today, we're going to go deep because this is level 2, right? You guys have already been to the first level. You understand basic chiropractic. We're going to go deeper. I'm going to break it down for you. I'm going to give you 4 models of subluxation. Subluxation is a joint dysfunction in the spine that affects the nerves that come out of the spine. And we use our technology to find that subluxation. We use x-ray to detect and find where it is. And we use adjustments to correct it. So how does spinal issues lead to problems like these 3 stories I just told you? And do you guys think that would be valuable to do? Okay, so to do that, we have to understand the nervous system a little better. And the nervous system is basically the brain and the spinal cord. That's called the central nervous system. And then the peripheral nervous system is all the nerves that come out of the spinal cord and go to various organs, glands, blood vessels, muscles, tissues, and joints. Now, your nervous system has two sides to it. One is called voluntary. Self-explanatory, right? If I say, take a deep breath, you all take a deep breath. You did it voluntarily. If I say everyone wave or everyone laugh, by the way, you're supposed to laugh at my jokes, and you know, all of that's voluntary. You at least smile to make me feel better. Right? I need that. So that's voluntary, and we're not going to talk about that because that's easy to understand. But the other side of it would be what? Involuntary. So they call that automatic, and because medical professionals like to make things complicated, they don't call it automatic. They call it autonomic. So it's the autonomic nervous system. We got a picture of it right here, and that's all I'm going to do with that chart. The autonomic nervous system is divided into two parts also. Now, what do you guys think of when I say autonomic or the automatic part of your nervous system? What functions are you thinking about? So it wouldn't be movement, right? It wouldn't be things you can do under your control. So what are some things that your body does that you don't necessarily control intentionally? Breathing. Like, does anyone have to remind you to breathe? Do you forget to breathe when you're sleeping? You know, you shouldn't. Now, that's called sleep apnea. Some people, right? And we'll touch on sleep apnea a little bit, but that may be level 3. But this is level 2 still. Heart, right? Digestion, absolutely. Do you have to tell your stomach, hey, I want you to produce some acid now? Or do you have to tell your stomach, I'm about to eat a hamburger? You know what that means? That means there's some carbs, some protein, and some fat. And it's going to be beef. Or you're telling your stomach, you have to send a memo. But actually what happens is the minute you smell the hamburger, your brain tells your stomach, hey, this is what's coming. Yeah, it's not pizza this time. It's a burger. He's probably going to wash it down with French fries and a milkshake. And so we're going to get ready. And so the pancreas will release enzymes like proteinase to digest the protein, lipase to break down the fat, amylase to break down the carbohydrates so you can absorb it properly. And then not only that, it tells your intestine, it tells your gallbladder to flush some bile into the small intestine to emulsify the fat so you can go through your intestines easier and better. All of that happens automatically. That's the autonomic nervous system. And then is it possible that there are times you need your heartbeat to increase and there are times you need it to slow down? Like when you eat that big Thanksgiving dinner, do you want your heart rate to be racing afterwards? Do you want it to slow down so you can fall asleep watching football?
That's right.
Nobody watches football? You watch football? Okay, good. One of us does. Everybody else watches. What do you guys watch? What do you watch?
I watch football, I watch hockey, I watch baseball, I watch everything.
All right, but Thanksgiving's all about football.
Yes.
It's not about family or like being thankful or you know, praising God for all the good things you have. It's football. Anyway, so but you get sleepy, right? You get sleepy, you feel a little more relaxed 'cause you ate a lot of food. And then if you're on the treadmill running, should your heart rate go up? Should your blood pressure go up? So if I'm running on a treadmill and while I'm running, someone checks my blood pressure and they go, oh my gosh, your blood pressure is really high. It's like 190 over 120. Should I be worried? Do I have hypertension? No, it's supposed to go up but I didn't tell it to go up. It went up automatically. Very good. So that's the autonomic nervous system. Now, the autonomic nervous system is divided into two parts, right? One part is called sympathetic and one is called parasympathetic. So the sympathetic, you can think of it as a gas pedal. It speeds things up. The parasympathetic is like the brake pedal. It slows things down. The sympathetic side, that's fight or flight. So right around the corner, a saber-toothed tiger comes out and shows me his teeth. Do you think I'm going to breathe a sigh of relief and get really sleepy?
No.
No, the exact opposite. What's going to happen? Well, I'm going to get ready to run, right? Because I'm not fighting that thing, right? So you either fight or flee, right? And this part is just there's no question. I don't even have to contemplate it. So physiologically, what happens to the body? Will my heart rate go down or up? Absolutely. Will my bronchioles in my lungs constrict and reduce oxygen, or will they dilate so I can get more oxygen? They'll dilate. What about the pupils of my eyes? Will they constrict or will they dilate so I get more light? Pupils dilate, absolutely. Now, if I get scared, do I turn bright red or will it turn pale white? White, because the blood leaves my face. Actually, the blood will leave my fingers and toes as well. Right? Why? Where does the blood go?
Central organs, things that
Well,
your muscles, your main
muscles, right? Because those are the ones I'm going to use. Those are the ones I'm going to use when I'm running. Right? Actually, the neocortex also slows down and shuts down sometimes because the blood goes to the primitive center of your brain, the part of the brain that's focused on survival. So that's why sometimes when in the most heightened state of fight or flight, you can't think straight. That's why you've got a teenager who's got the police around him and the police are pointing a gun at him and saying, "Put your hands up," and he reaches in his pocket. Why? Because he's thinking, I want to call my mother. Right? Because he can't think straight. In fact, everything, sometimes you even get tunnel vision, your heart's racing so fast you can't tell exactly what's going on. There are a lot of people who have said in this highest level of sympathetic overdrive, when you're really in fight or flight, you actually can't hear, you go deaf. So that's the extreme. But most people don't experience that extreme. The extreme is when, like, a mother will pick up a car, lift the car off a child. There's instances of that happening. So that's extreme. But most of us don't experience the extreme. Now, the problem is two systems will slow down or shut down. Other systems do too, but there's two big systems that slow down and shut down when the body is in fight or flight. Anybody know what those systems are? Yes, fantastic. One is digestion. So, did any of you play competitive sports? What sport?
like track team, swim team.
Good. So was it a running race? What event did you do?
I did 1 mile.
1 mile. Okay. Did you ever throw up right before a race?
Felt like it.
Some people actually go in the bushes and throw up, right? Because why? Because they're nervous, right? And when you're nervous, digestion stops. And so whatever's in your stomach, the brain goes, I'm not going to digest this right now because all the blood needs to go to his muscles. He needs to be running. He's nervous. He's worried he might not win. He's worried he might not even finish. He's worried he won't get off the blocks correctly. They use blocks on a 1 mile? They don't, right? No blocks on them. I did the 100 meter, so that's a little different. And I did high jump because I like the mattress you land on. It's nice. I would always take a nap. Jump. I wasn't good enough. I never cleared 5 feet. I cleared like 4 foot, nothing. But it was nice landing on a mattress. And but he's nervous. He'll go throw up. Digestion slows down in a state of fight or flight. In fact, the more severe the fight or flight, the slower the digestion gets. What's another system that stops? Well, yes, the neocortex. So you won't be able to solve a math problem when you're in a state of fight or flight. So I'll give you another example of fight or flight. That's a good one. That's not the one I wanted to mention. But imagine you have a big test coming, and you've studied for this test, and you're walking into the classroom. You're really, really nervous because this test determines the rest of your life. Let's say you're in college. It's your final exam, or it's your thesis, and you're applying for your PhD, whatever it might be. As you step into the classroom, you trip. And so now, you know how like your heart starts to race? Your mind will go blank. And everything you just studied and memorized, you forget. Now, it didn't disappear. You just can't access it anymore because like you're saying, the neocortex shut down. The blood's not going there. It's going to the primitive part of the brain. Now you're just worried about survival. And now you're even more scared. She's like, I just forgot everything I was going to say. I forgot everything. I'm going to fail this test. And then you get more and more fight or flight. So that is true. But there's another system that shuts down. What is it? Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's why sometimes in like really bad accidents, people don't feel pain. What we call that shock. So you go into shock. It's a nervous system's issue, but that's a little more complex for this talk. I was thinking about the immune system. So when you're worried about running away from the saber-toothed tiger, you're not worried about the bugs and bacteria and viruses that could be causing sickness. So the immune system shuts down. Why the immune system shuts down is because the immune system needs energy. In fact, it's the part of your body that requires a lot of energy. And so the body goes, I'm going to need that energy for fighting and running, so I'm not going to give it to the immune system. I'm going to use it up. And so the immune system shuts down. Now, and that's okay if all you're doing is running away from the tiger, because once you're safe, you come out of fight or flight, back into parasympathetic. 80% of your life should be in parasympathetic, and 20% should be in fight or flight. But if you live on the East Coast, I think it's probably more like 50-50. And closer to Washington, D.C. you are, it's probably like 80-20 the other way. So fight or flight, and so it's okay if it's just temporary. But what if you're one of those people who has to sit through rush hour traffic to go to work every morning, and you never know if you're going to get there on time, and every time you get to work, someone yells at you, and then at 5 p.m. when it's time to go home, right before it, someone drops a stack of paperwork on your desk, says this needs to be done before you leave today. And then finally when you get home, you're late, you missed dinner, and your spouse says, you're late again. You need to figure out how to come home. Your family needs you. Now, and that's day after day after day. That person's going to be in fight or flight longer than just a few minutes, right? That person's in fight or flight all day, every day. So what happens then? It's the same thing. Pupils dilate, right? Cold hands, cold feet. Dry eyes, dry mouth, dry skin. Constipation, indigestion. Chronic sinus infections. I just described one of my patients. Does that make sense? Because they are in chronic fight or flight. Everyone's like, that's me. And that's the person. That's the person when they put their head on the pillow at night, their mind is racing. Their body is exhausted. Why can't I fall asleep? Why do I keep thinking about these thoughts that are just so irrelevant? I don't even need to be thinking about this. But the same thoughts circulate like a train on a round track, around and around, and you can't shut it down. That's fight or flight. We call that wired and tired. And so there's stages of stress. There's wired and tired, and there's just tired, where you're just exhausted. That person has burnt up all their adrenal resources. So adrenal glands are tired. They're not producing a lot of adrenaline. That person gets lightheaded every time they stand up quickly. That person can drink coffee at night and still be able to fall asleep. That person falls asleep in church. That's the person that can't watch an exciting movie, even if it's Rambo. Okay, I like Rambo. Notebook, how's that? Titanic? My eyeballs sweat when I watch Titanic, so I try not to watch it that much. That's not a nervous system thing. That's just me. But yeah. Anyway, I won't say anymore. Chronic fight or flight. How are we doing on time? All right. Chronic fight or flight can lead to that. So that's the person that's got the chronic sinus infection. In fact, they're also going to have high cholesterol and high blood pressure, because their physiology thinks they're being chased by that tiger. That's why they can't fall asleep, because you can't fall asleep if you're being chased by a hungry tiger. It's not possible. No matter how tired you are, you're not going to fall asleep. So you have to come out of fight or flight into parasympathetic, which is typically in medicine called rest and digest, and I like to call it rest and repair, because healing, repair, regeneration all happen in parasympathetic. So some of you are like, I've been coming here, I've been getting adjusted, I've been doing everything right, and I'm just not healing. And I'm going through the same patterns, and the same aches and pains keep coming back, the same issues keep coming back. Well, it's because we haven't been able to get you to be 80% of the time in parasympathetic. So your body doesn't have time to heal. It keeps going back into sympathetic, which the body's all it's worried about is survival. And so we have to stay. That's why some of you, we've given you that breathing exercise. This is why. Because that breathing exercise will pull you out of sympathetic into parasympathetic, where your body can rest, repair, regenerate, and heal. Healing is the key. So healing happens then. That's why some people take longer to heal. That's why it is. Now, what happens during parasympathetic is everything slows down, right? Warmer hands and feet, lower heart rate, lower blood pressure, digestion is active, muscles aren't as strong, right? Because the blood's going to your organs. And you all know what that feels like, because that's basically Thanksgiving Day, right? You eat a meal, you lie down, you relax, you sit on the couch, you're dozing off, you're happy, you're relaxed. All the good emotions go with parasympathetic. So we really have to focus on staying in parasympathetic much longer. Creativity is higher also, because the top of the brain has more blood supply to it. So now let's get back to how the spine can affect. This looks like a kindergarten assignment. We have to write the same thing over and over 5 times. Except we're going to do it 4 times. These are the 4 disses. And these are 4 different models of subluxation. And so now we're going to get really deep into the science of things. And the first one is called dyskinesia. Do you guys know why doctors don't know how to spell? I'm sorry, do you know why doctors have bad handwriting? It's because we don't know how to spell. But I did spell this one correctly, because this is my world. I live in this. So, but everything else I don't know how to spell, so that's why I scribble and hope someone figures it out. Dyskinesia is also another name for pathomechanics. It's abnormal movement. So you know how we check your ranges of motion when you come in, when we do a exam? So by the way, I have a handout for you that has these 4 words on it, and it has the description and everything. So you're welcome to take notes if you want, or you just enjoy it, and it'll be on video also. But I have a little handout for you as well. So abnormal motion. If something isn't moving properly, it wears out. Very common sense, right? Now, if a segment in the spine is locked and it's not moving properly, or it's moving abnormally, it's very significant, because every segment in your spine is connected to the bone above and below it by 9 different ligaments. And I'm not going to name all 9 ligaments, because probably I didn't know all the names, but I know most of them. And you don't have to name them. But there's the anterior longitudinal ligament that goes in the front, posterior longitudinal ligament. You've got facet capsules, which is ligamentous around the capsule joints. You've got the disc, which is ligamentous as well. And you've got the interspinous ligaments, transverse ligaments, and then there's the nuchal ligament. So there's all these ligaments around the spine. And if a bone is misaligned, that means 5 out of 9 ligaments are damaged. They can't get So what are ligaments, first off? Ligament is fibrous tissue that is not elastic. That's why people tear ligaments in their knees, because ligaments aren't supposed to stretch. Ligaments stabilize, and so they're tight and they hold bones in place. Tendons do stretch a little bit. Tendons attach muscle to bone. What do ligaments attach to bone? Other bones. Okay? So a ligament attaches a bone to a bone, and that's why it cannot stretch. So if 2 bones are supposed to be lined up like this and one's misaligned, it's turned the wrong way even by a little bit, that means that ligament is being pulled. Well, if the ligament can't stretch, then it's pulling on the bone. Bone has this thing around it called periosteum, which is skin of the bone. And that skin has all the nerve endings in it. So that's why sometimes that can be painful. Breaking a bone, actually, the reason breaking a bone is painful is because the skin tears. So if someone stuck a needle in your back and scraped the bone, it would hurt just as bad as breaking the bone, because it would damage the periosteum. So ligament attaches like this on the bone, and now the bone is misaligned, so that ligament is tugging. It's called ligamentous tugging. Very creative, right? Tugging. And when it tugs on the periosteum, the bone marrow gets inflamed. It's called marrow edema. Now, you can't see that on x-ray. You need to use high-resolution MRI to be able to see that marrow edema. But a lot of times when we do an MRI report, if the radiologist is really good and they're experts at spine, they'll say marrow edema at this level in the front lower corner, so then we know which ligament's pulling. Either way, but we know it's because of a misalignment. So ligamentous tugging leads to marrow edema, which eventually increases calcium deposits along the path of that ligament. And so as that ligament keeps pulling, calcium starts to develop there and it forms a bone spur. Now, anything that's held motionless will calcify. That's why if I break this bone, we put it in a cast. Why do we put it in a cast? To immobilize it so it calcifies, so bone grows together. If I put a healthy elbow in a cast and leave that cast on for a year, what will happen to my elbow? It'll fuse. Bone spurs will grow, the bones will grow together, and this will be one solid. If I take an x-ray, this will be one L-shaped bone. There won't be a joint in there, and I'll never move it again. But as long as I move it at least once a day, every day, it won't do that. Well, there's segments in the spine that do the same thing. So they get misaligned, they get locked in misalignment. That's called dyskinesia, and it leads to the bone spur formation. Also, when it doesn't move, the discs get dehydrated because discs feed off of nutrition. They don't have blood supply to them. So all these discs, the only way they can get nutrients is they're like sponges. So you squeeze them and you open them up and they pull moisture in. That moisture has nutrients in it, and that's what keeps them hydrated. So if these bones are locked in place, they're not moving, you're not getting that. It's called imbibition. How nutrients get into discs is a concept called imbibition, and it can't follow that process, and so the discs dry up and they start to bulge and they get narrow. Then eventually it gets so narrow that it starts to impinge on the nerve that comes out of the spine. Also, discs have their own nerve supply. The recurrent meningeal nerve supplies the disc. So disc damage over time can cause discogenic back pain. This is basically arthritis. So misalignment in the spine, which is dyskinesia, will eventually lead to disc damage, bone spurs, arthritis, and then the segments will eventually fuse together. Once the two segments fuse, the one above and below is going to be next, because now they will develop pathomechanics. They won't move properly because the one segment is fused, now the one above and below has to work harder. And so it spreads throughout the spine. It's kind of like a tooth cavity. If you don't correct it at the beginning, it spreads through the whole tooth, rots the tooth, then it spreads to other teeth, and eventually takes out a whole row of teeth. Same thing with this. It'll spread. So subluxations can cause dyskinesia, which leads to arthritis in the spine, which eventually can cause severe nerve damage and pain. That one makes sense? Let's do the next one. This one, which one am I going to do next? We're going to do this. This one's called dysponesis. Oops, I told you I can't spell. And this has nothing to do with ponies. Dysponesis is abnormal distribution of muscle energy. What do I mean by that? Anybody have like a tight muscle or a knot in the muscle? That's what this is. So misalignments in the spine can cause abnormal distribution of muscle tone because now muscles are playing a tug of war. So this bone is misaligned. Visualize scoliosis, right? So let's say Charlie has a little bit of scoliosis. Well, would you agree that the muscles around this curvature aren't going to be normal, have normal tone? So that's called hypertonicity. The tone of the muscle goes up because some muscles are tugging and some muscles are tugging on the other side, and it's abnormal distribution of energy. So imagine if Margot and I are playing the tug of war. And let's say Margot is pulling twice as much force as I am. First off, she's going to get tired too, but I'm going to get really tired because I'm trying to hold her back. So that's basic tug of war, right? We'll practice later. So it's kind of like a tug of war around your spine. So what do you think happens if I have muscles on one side of my neck pulling harder than the muscles on the other side of my neck? And my job is to sit at a computer or work over a workbench or, bend over patients all day as a chiropractor. Yeah, not only that, I'll get exhausted because resting tone of muscles shouldn't be very high. Resting tone, by definition, is resting. Now, no tone means that person's dead. That's paralysis. So resting, there has to be some tone in every muscle. So when we do an electromyogram, sometimes we'll do a surface electromyogram test on our patients, we're measuring tone. And below normal tone is just as bad. So dyskinesis can be lower than normal tone, which means a muscle just won't activate. Let's say I'm trying to pick something up and it's just this muscle's just weak. It just won't pick it up. So it refuses to contract, it refuses to activate. Or it's hypertonic, which means it stays tight and tense all the time. So like when you're at a computer all the time with bad posture and one side of your neck is tired all the time, or fatigue. Bottom line, you get fatigued. Dyskinesis leads to fatigue. That's the person who's really tired at the end of the day. Every day. They're always tired. They're irritable, they're tired. They always have these aches and pains. You see them always stretching, you know. They're sitting in church, they're going like this, you know. So everything's about church for us. Dyskinesis can be caused by the same thing that causes dyskinesia. So technically you probably have both. Not you, but like the person who has a subluxation has both, because dyskinesia will lead to arthritis. Dyskinesis leads to muscle tension, muscle pain, and fatigue. Make sense? Any questions about that one? Notice I turn around when I ask if anyone has questions. I don't see if you... So the next one, we're going to call this one disafferentation, and that has 2 F's. That's an N. All right. This is an R. Disafferentation. What do you think that is? Afferent is the opposite of efferent. So efferent is effect, right? An efferent impulse from the brain affects something. The brain sends a signal, says, hey, kidneys, I want you to work a little faster. So that's efferent, which is output. Afferent is the opposite, which is input. So how the brain receives information is through afferent nerve impulses that are going toward the brain. So when I interact with you, the visual impulses are afferent. Your voice talking to me, afferent. When I observe your body language, everything I'm receiving, and while I'm talking to you, I notice, oh, the room is getting cold, or you know, whatever else. Hey, the lights just flickered, or the ground under my feet is uneven. All of that is afferent input. Like all of you right now know exactly where your knees are without even looking at your knees. How do you know? Because I put them there. No, actually, it's because your knees are talking to your brain. That's afferent input. In fact, every joint sends a signal to your brain, probably 1 or 2 impulses per second. I don't know the exact number, but it's impulses going to the brain from every joint in your body. Now, how many of you have ever had your foot fall asleep? Okay, good. I'm not the only one. And when your foot falls asleep, it's because afferent input was disrupted. That's where you don't feel that foot. All of a sudden, you're like, hey, this, and you know, the brain is like this overprotective mother that wants to know where all the kids are. So your brain needs to know where every joint is, every part of your body is. In fact, the brain feeds off of input. That's why exercise is so important. That's why moving your joints is so important, because your brain loves it. In fact, if you put someone in a body cast so they can't move, literally you'll see the brain shrink within months. I learned that from the TV show House. And it actually happened to someone, yeah. It was a good show, wasn't it? All right.
You look like you will.
Yeah. That guy was smart. Where was I? Input to the brain, right? Input to the brain is important. So if I have disafferentation, something that would normally look like a beautiful sunrise or a beautiful sunset, I won't enjoy it as much because I'm not perceiving that input the way I should. Or a hug, or a moment with one of my kids is not going to be received. So if we have misalignments that are affecting input to the brain, it's not just a medical thing. It's affecting how we're perceiving the world around us. And then it leads to inappropriate behavior. You ever been around someone, you talk to them and they respond in an odd way? You're like, that guy's awkward. You know, but it's because they're not receiving the input the way they're supposed to. And most of that happens with teenagers. you know. But that's different because the teenage brain actually shrinks during the teenage years because it needs to become more efficient. So it's really, really big. And by the end of your teenage years, it becomes a lot smaller because all these unnecessary pathways slough off and disappear. So kids do not expect, I said donut, but I must be hungry. Do not expect your teenagers to be reasonable or to be logical with their choices and decisions. Just don't expect it because it's not going to happen. They're going to make silly mistakes, and hopefully they won't hurt themselves too much, but that's just the definition of being a teenager. Now, but other than that, disafferentation does the same thing. It reduces input. So where does that input come in handy? By the way, let's go back to the foot that fell asleep. So when the foot falls asleep, what do you guys do? Yeah, you have to you stimulate it somehow, right? Because light touch is afferent input. So you're increasing afferent input from that area to the brain. What else do you do? Do you move the joint around? Yeah. You move it around, right? Now, one of the things that the brain does the minute the foot falls asleep and it's not receiving information from that foot is it makes the foot what we call hypersensitive or hyperesthesia. Hypoesthesia is reduced sensation. Hyperesthesia is increased sensation. That's why light touch feels like pins and needles. All of a sudden you're like, hey, this used to feel like just touch, but now it feels like pins and needles. And when you move it, it's just a weird sensation, right? And until it fully wakes up, because the brain made your foot hypersensitive because it wants to get input. It's like, I'm going to make it super sensitive so every little thing I can feel, because I'm that overprotective mama who wants to know where my foot is, right? Where my kids are. And so I'm looking for that foot. And that's why it's hypersensitive. Now, once you move it around, see, when the foot's not moving, there's still signals going to the brain like this. Afferent input going. Every time you move a joint, instead of 1 or 2 signals per second, it's hundreds. It's a burst of input to the brain. When you get an adjustment, some of you have heard that pop, that's millions of impulses in one instant to the brain. That's why it wakes up that joint so well. That's why an adjustment is so powerful. It does in an instant what it would take, I don't know, lots of movements to accomplish the same thing. So it wakes up the pathway between the brain and that joint. In fact, we've seen it on functional MRI, where they'll ask someone to wiggle their toes, and like 4 different centers of the brain light up. Then they do an adjustment on the spine, and then they have them wiggle their toes, and only 1 center lights up. It becomes very efficient. Only the part of the brain that's connected to that foot lights up, not everything else. So we actually become more efficient through chiropractic adjustments. So disafferentation, so now how does that apply to real life? We said this one leads to arthritis, right? This one leads to fatigue. This one will lead to poor balance. People with disafferentation fall a lot. Why? Because every time I step, when my foot hits the ground, instantly my brain knows if the ground is even or uneven. Is that important information? Yes. Very much so. Now, if I didn't know that, I would step, I would go, and I'd roll my ankle, I'd fall over, and all kinds of stuff, right? But every time I step, that's why I am so against those orthotics that people wear that have a heel cup. Have you seen those? They're rounded where the heel is, because your calcaneus and your talus, 2 bones, that joint, if you hit the ground, this bone stays level and this one tilts, and the brain goes, the ground's uneven. But if it's in a cup, it holds it in one place. And whether the ground's even or uneven, it won't tilt. So that's why I don't like those heel cups. Now, if someone has a heel spur and they need to have that cup so that they don't feel pain right every time they step, I understand that's necessary. And I'm not stepping on the toes of, no pun intended, of any podiatrist. So they're experts at the foot, and I'm not telling them not to do what they're doing. I'm just telling you this is why chiropractors don't like heel cups. The other thing we don't like is the gel. Some of you have gel under their feet. Well, think about it. When my heel strikes the ground, it's instant. It's impact. The brain knows, okay, I found the ground. But if there's gel, it hits and it sinks in slowly. The brain doesn't even know if I found the ground yet or not. It might be very comfortable. You feel like you're walking on air, but it's not good for our balance. Now, misalignments in the spine can reduce flow of input to the brain, so we lose our balance and coordination, and we can fall a lot. So I'll give you one other one. Disafferentation can cause ADHD. Isn't that interesting? So let me ask you a question. Actually, last night I did this talk and I had a medical doctor in the audience, which made things a little interesting because, you know, I prefer not using medication for most things because there's other solutions. So why is it that when we have a child that is quote unquote hyperactive, we give him a stimulant and he calms down? Ritalin is a stimulant. It's speed. Back in the 80s, they called it speed, right? That was a drug that everybody used. You know, most of you weren't alive in the 80s, but I remember the 80s, and there were. Did you? Or you might have skipped the 80s, but
We were there.
80s were good. I like the 80s. They would take speed. That was the drug. Like now it's methamphetamine. Amphetamines are speed also. I mean, that's basically, it's an amphetamine, right? Ritalin and Adderall and Vyvanse, all those. There was a big shortage of Adderall last year because so many people are taking it. But it's a stimulant. So why is it that someone who doesn't have ADHD would take that and they would run around the house and spend all night cleaning and they wouldn't need to sleep? Or they would study for an exam and ace that exam and not ever be tired, versus the ADHD kid that takes the same drug, they calm down and they stop being hyperactive. And when I've asked most medical doctors this question, they say, oh, it's because their system is backwards. And that couldn't be further from the truth. They're not backwards. They're the same as you and I. What they have is disafferentation. Remember I said the brain feeds off of input? We talked about Dr. House, and they had a guy in a body cast and the guy's brain was shrinking. Brain needs input. So if you don't have something suppressing that input to the brain, while you're sitting there relaxed, your brain is receiving input from all your body parts. But if something is misaligned and it's suppressing the flow of input to the brain, now you have to move your arms and legs to increase that input to the brain. You guys follow me? So someone who has ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, they need to run around all the time. Because when they sit still, they're not comfortable. Their brain's like, come on, I need to feel the body. Move, so I can feel it. Move your hands, move your feet, move, tap, play, fidget, run around. Don't sit still, because I need to know if you're alive. And so when we give them a stimulant, something that speeds up their body, when you speed it up, now they become the same as us. And now they can sit still. Now, if they were listening to this talk, because I'm such a great, vibrant speaker, they would be able to sit still because I'm stimulating them. But I know I told you guys to laugh, so thank you. I appreciate that. We're going to get a sign. We're going to do this at North because they weren't as good as you guys. We're going to put a sign up. You remember in the 80s, they had those signs that said applause? Or they used to pick up a sign, right? Or a light would go on. And then they would play a laugh track. So my jokes come with their own laugh track. I don't need that. But we should put that on the speaker system. So whenever I tell a joke, like Dr. Michael will hit a button and like you hear laughter. And so that, anyways, good old 80s. Growing Pains and Who's the Boss. Did you guys watch those? So they were all subluxated. They had disafferentation. So can you see how disafferentation can cause ADHD? Because there's no input to the brain. Something's blocking it. So sometimes that's first bone and neck. That's why we take x-rays through the mouth and from the side. Because the angle of the atlas, if it's less than 14 degrees, it can press on the brainstem and cause those things. So now, should we wait for kids to have symptoms before we check their spine? Yeah, I mean, we check their teeth the minute the first tooth pops up. We go to the dentist, make sure that's a good tooth. You know, their spine is there from the day they're born. They really should be checked. In fact, there's a hospital in New Zealand, now there's multiple, where they don't let newborns leave the hospital unless a chiropractor has checked their spine. Because being born can be traumatic. That's disafferentation. Any questions about disafferentation? So think about it. Someone who has subluxations can have all three. Does that make sense? So not only is it causing joint issues that will lead to arthritis, not only is it causing abnormal muscle tension and muscle patterns around their body that cause fatigue and pain, but it also is reducing input to the... In fact, did you guys know when you take a painkiller, like an over-the-counter painkiller, you do the same thing? You slow down all input to the brain? You mainly stop the pain input, but they say like other things. So people who have been on painkillers long term, they develop a mild version of this afferentation. Not only that, what painkillers, what they do is they raise your pain threshold. Sorry, lower your pain threshold. So that's why people on long-term pain medication sometimes develop things like fibromyalgia, where like touching their back is painful. Just rubbing their back, they can't do massages, they hate being squeezed and hugged, because everything becomes painful because now they're sensitive, their pain threshold has gone down. This autonomia. Now remember, we talked about the branch of the nervous system. One was voluntary, the other was called autonomic, right? So this autonomia is disturbance of the autonomic nervous system. What is the autonomic nervous system? Sympathetic, parasympathetic, right? So every degree, are you guys cold?
No.
Everybody's good? Temperature's good? Okay. This autonomia is disturbance of that autonomic nervous system. So every misalignment or subluxation in the spine has a degree of sympathetic response to it. Every subluxation, even a small one. So you're just a little bit more fight or flight than when you didn't have that misalignment. Now, what are the two systems that slow down when we have dysautonomia?
Digestion and the immune system.
That's right. Digestion, immune system. So when we have misalignments in our spine, they're like, oh, chiropractors are quacks because they think that misalignments in the spine cause them to get sick more often. I'm like, yeah, you can call me a quack if that's what that means. Because that's what that means. You increase sympathetic response in the body, you're more susceptible to infections and disease of every kind. Because healing, repair, regeneration happens when you're in parasympathetic, but if you have misalignment in your spine, you're not. That's why we do heart rate variability tests on you guys. Have you all had the test yet? The heart rate variability, where you put your hand in the device and it tells you if you're in, it tells you if you're in, if your autonomic nervous system is, the tone is where it should be. It tells us how well you're handling stress, and it tells us if your body's stuck in fight or flight or if your body's fatigued from a physiologic adrenal standpoint. And we can get into heart rate variability on another talk, but dysautonomia also means digestion slows down. So again, we'll talk about that person who has cold hands, cold feet, dry eyes, dry mouth, dry skin, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and they have chronic sinus infections, and they have chronic indigestion and heartburn, and they have chronic constipation. That's dysautonomia right there. And they can't sleep. They have trouble falling asleep. Now, it could also be that a misalignment, let's say if the misalignment's right there, it will also affect the nerve that goes out of that segment. So if it's right here, you can see it goes to the heart and lungs. So sometimes someone who has anxiety, where they're sitting there, everything's okay, and all of a sudden the heart starts racing, it's because there's misalignments in the upper back, base of the neck, upper back. Or sometimes I've had patients who had asthma, we correct this part of the spine, and the lungs start working, and asthma goes away. Let's pause. Is that a good time? We're good to go? Keep going? All right. And then look, these nerves go to the stomach, and these nerves go to the intestines, and these nerves go to the reproductive organs and your bladder and kidneys. So there's a nerve that goes to every cell, tissue, and organ in the body. In fact, your brain controls where your blood flows as well. That's why, like we talked about earlier, if I get scared, blood leaves my face. And when I get embarrassed, blood goes to my face. I can't explain why that one is. We're going to have to ask God when we get up there. But I don't know why you turn red when you're embarrassed, but that's a fact. More blood goes to the face, and so the brain controls blood flow and everything. Is there anything the brain doesn't control? The weather. That's my joke for today. So how important is it to have this system checked? Can you see how this is more than about just back pain and neck pain? Can you see how, so these same nerves control development in children. Those same nerves determine if the heart's developing properly, kidneys are developing properly, as the babies are growing. In fact, the spinal cord is the first thing that develops in a fetus. Because when the mama cell and papa cell come together and they fertilize, if that egg is fertilized, it divides into multiple cells, right? That ball of cells are just stem cells. And then a groove forms in the middle, becomes a notochord, and that notochord becomes a spinal cord. In fact, it develops from the bottom up. So it's the spinal cord first, then the brain. Then all the other organs form. Because the way it works is the brain sends signals to those organs telling them how to become what they need to become. It's very critical. And that process is still going on today because we don't stop developing. See, the human body is self-healing, self-regulating, and it's regenerative. Your skin cells only live 30 days. Your liver cells only live 24 days. Your taste buds only live 8 days. Your lung cells only live 7 years. Your bone cells only live 90 to 120 days. Your red blood cells are only alive 4 months. Everything in your body dies and gets replaced with new cells. What controls that? Again, the brain and the nervous system. Again, how important is it to make sure the spine doesn't have any interference causing problems in the nervous system? So we have an event coming up. It's the Super Bowl of all events in our offices. It's called the Patient Appreciation Days. You've been to one, right? And you've been to one already. You've been to one, right? So we do it every year, and everybody gets a T-shirt, and that's the best part. But we'll also have food in the office. You've been to one, right? Yeah, multiple probably. Oh, okay. So you get a T-shirt, and there's going to be food here, and everybody gets a free adjustment. But we ask that you donate something, and it can be a penny, to the rescue mission to support the cause, and we just kind of like to raise money for them. And then we also offer you an opportunity to get your family members checked. So they will get their entire evaluation, their whole, whatever you got when you were a new patient, your consultation, exam, all the x-rays, everything, absolutely free. Again, we ask that they donate something to rescue mission, but it can be donation of any amount, and we'll do their evaluation on us. There's no obligation. That doesn't mean your family member or friend has to keep coming or come and get adjusted. They could take the information we give them and go to their own chiropractor. It doesn't matter. Now, we're the best, but you can go to another chiropractor if you want. And just ask them if they know what disafferentation is. So when you're making the appointment, it's like, hey, chiropractor, do you know what disafferentation is? If they say no, don't go there. All right? And if they're willing to adjust you without taking x-rays, I'd be hesitant. I'm not going to say don't go, okay? Because there's lots of different techniques. There's low force techniques that are gentle, that aren't dangerous, that they wouldn't take x-rays. I just think it's a lot safer. If we're going to be moving bones around, we should take a look and see what they look like before we start moving them around. But I'm not saying they're not effective, and I'm not saying they're good. It's just I personally would like, if someone's going to adjust me, I'd like them to take some x-rays. So anyways, we'll be doing that for all your family members and friends. It's the first week of November. You're going to get stuff in the email. You're going to get stuff in the mail. We're going to tell everybody about it. We're going to have hundreds of people in here. We may even have vendors. We may have, in this office, I think we have a massage therapist come in. I don't know if we have one for the North office, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. We'll try to get one. Anyways, take advantage of that. If you have a family member or friend that you want to schedule for now, just do it now. Get them scheduled so you can reserve a spot. You can tell the spots fill up really fast. So if you have family members, friends you want to get in, let's get them in there as soon as possible. And I believe we are done. And I finished 1 minute late. I apologize, but we started 2 minutes late, so it's not bad. I'm actually a minute early.
Yay, good job.
My pleasure. Thank you.